It's time for the inaugural Gorgeous George and Go Show. I'm not going to do all that, guys. It's the Gorgeous George and Go Show, episode number 1, along with Richard Hunter from Phone Booth Fighting Podcast. Guys, I'm excited and I'm nervous. I don't know which one I'm more of, but I'm ready to go. How about you guys?
This is the easiest one of the shows. There should be no nerves because basically we get to do what we want. It's the Gorgeous George and Go Show.
Yeah,
anything goes.
we're transitioning
No
over
pun intended.
slowly but surely, and I think we'll slowly dial it in. But the one thing we're going to have is fun. Us three working together more consistently. I'm excited about it.
Me too. For a lot of people who maybe have only been listening to you guys in the recent past, even over the last handful of years, and have known you from your Sirius XM incarnation, they don't realize how far you go back, even before MMA Junkie to Tag Radio. And actually, for me, I wasn't a listener even back then. This is all just mythical folklore I've heard about from the ancient past. So that might be something that's good to explain to everybody as far as the roots from which you came, and that also how everything's kind of has a little bit of a feel like that again.
Kind of like the BC era, except BJR. Okay. Where do you want to start? Episode 1, Tag Radio, April 11, 2007, or in mid-2006, after the passing of the late, great Ryan Bennett, of which we were friends with and a fan of. We can take it even further back.
I think we have to go 2 years before that.
Before that? Okay.
Yeah. George and I started off as, well, actually, why don't we start here? UFC 1. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it like NFL playoffs or something was going on where the commercial came on and everybody just kind of went nuts? And I think that was a little bit of the birth of being MMA fans because everybody wanted to see what the hell that was all about, which directed us into wanting more. Who is this Royce Gracie guy?
And I also saw an ad in the Register, our local newspaper in Santa Ana. I know for a while it was just the Register, then the OC Register, whatever it was at the time. I remember seeing that, and they were going to settle who is the baddest man on the planet. That's something you can always throw out if you're a young organization or an older organization, and I think that's why Ken Shamrock got a lot of mileage out of that nickname, the world's most dangerous man. But basically that's what they were going to get to, is they were going to figure out who the baddest man on the planet was, and I wanted to know, especially because I pretty much figured it was the heavyweight boxing champion of the world.
Yeah.
Old Thunder Lips threw a wrench in all that when he was just tossing around Rocky Balboa in
The Ultimate Meatball.
In part 3 of the Rocky series, and I thought, wow, I guess there is something to the wrestlers. And I had heard about a Russian named Alexander Karelin, who obviously was big dude, well put together, one of the historical figures of wrestling, Greco-Roman.
So day one, you're thinking Jimerson's going to run away with it? He's the boxer. I'm going for the karate guy.
No, because I had never even heard of Art Jimerson, honestly.
Yeah.
If it had been anybody but him, like give me Holyfield or whatever, then I probably would have said yeah, but I paid attention to what Hulk Hogan did. And I'm obviously joking, but I knew still that there was a history, and if the wrestler gets his hands on you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I probably, I guess if you're asking, I can answer this question one way for sure. I didn't think it was going to be Royce Gracie, for sure.
Yeah.
I was gravitating towards the bigger dudes, and I remember Pat Smith and Ken Shamrock, some of those guys, I guess, is probably Ken Shamrock, just the label alone, the nickname alone.
Well, Royce Gracie and by and large Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at that point was such an unknown. To me, that was like when you watch the Academy Awards and you have seen 4 of the 5 movies nominated for Best Picture, but the 5th one is like this foreign language subtitled film, and you're like, oh, I haven't seen that one. So I'm going to pick one of the other four.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's not because you can discount the fifth one. It's because you have no knowledge of it whatsoever, so you just automatically do
There's
that.
no way some director in Brazil is going to beat the
Right.
Americans and the
Right.
Europeans.
But what it ends up being is like, I mean, that was like black magic at that point to a lot of those guys, where they just looked so confused. Art Jimerson was Exhibit A. I mean, he just freaked out being mounted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just going through round one, even after seeing how easy Hoist Gracie, did his thing, Gerard Gordeau, the guy that kicked
Yeah.
Taylor Tooley, right away was like, okay, that guy's 6'5", he can kick. Give me that guy. And I mean, I was all over the place. Whoever I was with, my friends would tell you, he couldn't decide. You know what I mean? But the interest was peaked
Yeah.
to high levels.
Well, what that did was, George said it, piqued our interest. And from there, we had to find everything about that sport. And at the time, the internet, this is dial-up probably, this is AOL. We found a chat room called Mousel's Forum, right?
Mhm.
You would go on
Tim
there,
Moussel.
and maybe there were, 100 guys
That
in
was
there
the greatest forum
they would
at that time.
post things. And from time to time,
They
you
weren't
would hear
asking you to like send them any pictures. Or
age,
anything
sex,
like that.
location, no,
Yeah.
none of that.
That's
And so-
cyber.
What would happen is they would say things like, "You think Hoist Gracie's great? You should see his cousin," and things like that
Ah.
would pique your interest. So you'd go down this rabbit hole and you try and find all the information you could. Then a guy like Ryan Bennett pops up, right? And he has his own podcast. It's all about MMA, and he does it with professional fighter Frank Trigg. And George and I become fans of that show, and we watch that show every day. We would listen to it.
How did you get it? How did you consume it?
You went to MMA Weekly,
Okay.
and you just hit whatever button they had right there.
To play live on the front page.
Play live, and
So-
it would take you to a, I guess it was...
It's like Shoutcast or something like that.
Shoutcast, yeah,
Okay.
one of those.
Yeah.
I'm just interested because these are the very
Real
earliest
player.
machinations of this kind of
And so what it was
for the
Ryan
platform.
Ryan had kind of like a startup podcast kit, I guess is what but I mean, he made
He
it.
had a mic.
He had a mic, and he would speak into the mic, and then Frank Trigg would be on a cell phone in L.A., El Segundo.
Okay. Yeah.
And anytime Trigg said something, the cell phone would just go up to the mic, and that's how you heard
Wow.
Frank
And that's how they had their guests.
Trigg. Yeah.
It was really, really
Yeah.
basic. I knew this because I picked up Ryan from the airport one day.
Uh-huh.
He was going to do Rumble on the Rock to cover it. And we asked him, is there going to be a show tomorrow? And he goes, no, I'll be in L.A. He lived in San Luis Obispo.
Uh-huh.
And he was going to go to Hawaii to cover it, but somehow in there he said, I'm going to be in L.A. And, are you traveling? And he goes, I'm going to be on an 8-hour layover but I don't think I can get
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
No, there wasn't even Wi-Fi back then, was there?
Yeah, there was Wi-Fi back
You
then.
sure?
Yeah.
Boy, I don't know if it was just in
there
the,
may have been.
yeah.
There may have been because I got my first Apple 17-inch laptop, and I remember when I opened it, boom, it just worked, and I was like,
Yeah.
"What's this?" And
Yeah.
that's how I discovered Wi-Fi. So yeah, it worked because this was 2005,
Okay.
I believe.
By the
And
way, how old are you guys at this point?
Phew, I was just starting
this was
college.
like 13, 14 years ago, so I was about 35.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was just starting college, I remember, because
So
I don't think
19,
I
20?
listened to him. Oh, no, wait. I listened to him back when I was still at the house, when I lived with you in Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm like 28 or something, 29 around there.
No, earlier than that.
well, if he's 35,
Yeah,
You're
I'm
40.
like-
Now go back like 15 years. 25.
you were 35 when you started listening to the show?
that's going to make
Like
you 20.
2002 or something like that. 17 years ago. What was it? 49. 32 maybe.
Okay, all right.
It would make goes about 23.
Yeah.
And yeah, you would hit that button and you would exit the MMA Weekly website
Mm-hmm.
and you would go to like a new player that opened up.
Okay, yep.
Windows player, real player, who knows what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ryan, by then I had already established myself as a caller, and he said he had an 8-hour layover, and I go, tell you what, I'm going to go pick you up at the airport, bring you back, you can do the show, we'll get a bite to eat, and then I'll take you back. And he goes, I'm in.
Did he know you?
Yeah.
But, I mean, had you guys met, like,
We
you
had
were
met, like,
little friendly?
By him saying, hey, come down to, the UFC was going to Anaheim a lot.
Yeah.
And I think he just had like a little bit of a meet and greet, basically in his room.
Okay.
Sounds a little creepy, but he could do the show from the room.
Yeah.
and he would invite fighters that were staying in the hotel. Hey, just come up to my room, and that was the only show you did. You didn't have this sheet that the UFC gives you.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to do ESPN, and you got to do this show and that show.
Yeah.
There wasn't that. It was basically him. I think Sherdog finally had gotten theirs going, and Full Contact Fighter, a few others.
Mhm.
But he was consistent. He was just
Yeah.
daily. So we had met him, and I mean, we weren't best friends, but enough to like he knew that he had a chat room. So because I was in the chat room, because I called in, because I met him, I think he figured, okay, well at least I know I'm in good hands here. So I go and I pick him up. He sets it up, and dude, it was just one of those days where we had bad internet, and we tried a couple times. I mean, he had the mic, he did the intro, he started everything, and he was just gonna pass me the mic, and we were gonna talk.
Mhm.
And but I think it like it was wireless, and we were buffering or something, and we couldn't get it going. It was just slow internet in Santa Ana, California that day. Eventually, he gave up. He tried reconnecting, and eventually he just gave up. It was
Now-
just kind of a mess.
Now, at this point, where are you goes? Are you like trying to pressure your mom into making him take you along?
I think by
to do it?
then I was already living in Paris. Our parents had bought another house,
Uh-huh.
and I was going to school out there.
Okay. All right.
But you know what hurt the most about that episode?
Yeah.
He proclaimed me part of the MMA Weekly Hall of Fame.
Ah.
It was either the MMA Weekly Hall of Fame or MMA Weekly Radio Hall of Fame, but I think it was the MMA Weekly Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And I was honored,
Yeah.
honestly, because of that gesture of going to pick him up.
Yeah.
I mean, that, my participation and
Yeah.
everything. But it was like buffering in and out. And how can I compare it? I don't know. Picture, I guess, an SS call, whatever, and you can maybe pick up a few things. You can hear them. Where are
Maybe-
you at? The Atlantic Ocean, North
Right,
Atlantic?
like Amelia Earhart's distress call. A lot of people
Something like
claim
that.
they heard it, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah. So, luckily, I think a guy named Doug, his name was Fight Fan, he may have heard it.
Oh,
Him
man,
or
I
another
forgot
guy
about
may
that.
have heard it, and so they would corroborate my story. Because
Yeah.
I probably didn't deserve to be in it, except for that gesture of going to the airport and doing it, because he was like, dude, this dude's loyal. He doesn't want to miss a show. He's willing to do this. And he didn't want to wait in an airport 8 hours. That's a long time in an
Yeah.
airport. So, yeah, I mean, that happened. And then about another year goes by. Ryan had gotten hired by the Fight Network, which is now, is it still called Fight Network?
Yeah.
Yeah. They, I think where Aaron Bronstedter's now at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The serious schmo.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
yeah,
he's-
yeah.
that- yeah.
That's who
Okay.
Yeah.
thinks he is.
So, they're called something else, but whatever. Where Robin Black used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they're still called the Fight, he got hired there. Big John McCarthy got hired there as well,
Mhm.
and they were just, people were just moving around, and they asked Ryan to go cover an event. By then he had moved from San
Oh.
Luis Obispo to Utah.
We're missing a part though.
Okay.
So we're fans of the show. Meet Ryan, hanging out with him a couple times, but we actually became parts of the show because when they would come into town, he would do the show in a hotel room,
Mm-hmm.
and listeners were invited to come listen in on the show. But we had already done that a couple times to where he was cool with, as him and Trigger doing the show, George and I would run down to the lobby, and we would try and find fighters, bring them up to the room, and do the show.
Doing
So-
a little guerrilla producing.
now remember, these fighter profiles aren't on there. You can't go on an MMA Junkie website or even the UFC website and find out who they are.
Yeah.
So there were times where I would walk up with Thiago Alves.
Mm-hmm.
All right, walk up with him. I coerce him into the room, and we go in there, and Ryan would pass me a note and go, "Who's this guy?" And I would have to go, "This is Thiago Alves," like Hermes Franca,
Yeah.
Matt Wyman,
Yeah.
Tim Sylvia, like a lot.
He
of
didn't do it for all of them, but
Not all of them, but a few
like
here
one
and
under
there.
Carter, he was like, "Who's this?"
Now, did you guys become Gorgeous George and Goes because of the chat room? Were those like chat
No.
room handles? You already had
I had
those
that since
Yeah,
high
nicknames.
it was-
school,
we were
and
both
he
that.
had this since he was a kid.
Okay, and is that what you were in the chat room?
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Okay,
because I was already in my MySpace days, so
Yeah.
that was me.
okay,
And so we would bring these fighters up, so we kind of would become a part of the show
yeah,
on the road.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So,
Oh, one more question.
okay.
ahead.
Did the fighters typically know, if not the specific show, what the basic idea of this streaming audio was? Or did you ever get in a situation where you're like, hey, professional fighter, I'm Goes. I want you to come up and do this. What is it? Well, it's not a radio show, but it's on the internet, and you're talking to a mic. Like, did you have to get into that kind of explanation with them sometimes?
Yeah, a few times. But you got to remember, like, what a fighter goes through now, maybe days before the fight, is completely different. There's no press conference. There's even the nothing.
There wasn't
big.
open workouts. I don't think
they didn't have like a full schedule.
Yeah.
And so
they had some free time.
Even like weight cutting wasn't to that point, right? Sometimes they're just starving themselves.
An American-based fighter like a Jeremy Horn, if you just said, do you want to come up and do MMA Weekly? Like, without even saying it's a show or Ryan Bennett, yes, they'll do it.
It's got MMA in it.
Because nobody was asking them for any interview.
But they wanted to feel like stars.
If they were in Vegas, not too many were being asked to. Maybe Liddell was gonna be in the Review Journal or something like that.
They wanted to feel important.
So
it wasn't that hard.
They're in. And if you told somebody like a Thiago Tavares or somebody that didn't know English, but you just said MMA Weekly, I think they'd at least feel safe to get into an elevator and go, okay, what
Plus, what are we going to do to them?
I'm in, but whatever it is. Now, the whole point of internet radio, people were confused. But Brian was pretty sharp. He had a good voice. He was a professional broadcaster. He worked for NBC in San Luis Obispo. He had his laptop and his mic, and Trig was with him. So right away they were like, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, everybody had kind of heard of it. Joe Silva used to call in when he was a matchmaker. Towards the end, Joe Silva could not do any interviews, but he used to call into that show.
Well, no kidding. Like, I don't know how many people listening to this realize, but think about for a second the fact that you do not see, well, Joe Silva's not with UFC anymore, but you don't see Sean Shelby or Mick Maynard interviewed outside of just like the countdown shows or whatever.
It's in their contract.
That's been the case for as long as I can remember. That actually is an example of how far back we're going, that they would actually want to put the matchmakers on anything they could get them on.
Right. So
Interesting.
Everybody would listen to Ryan's show, including Joe Silva, and Joe Silva would call in and go, no, that's not what happened. What happened was we offered him the contract, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But what happened was Dana would also call in. He'd go on rants or whatever.
What? Wait a second. This doesn't sound like the Dana White I know. Mm-hmm. You're saying he would become animated.
A little bit.
Oh. But every once in a while, Joe would give a different version of the same story. So Dana was kind of like giving you this version of what he wanted you to think. And Joe would be like, well, he's right, except so-and-so. He'd give you the finer details.
Yeah.
And I think they discovered, hey, it wasn't like some big blow-up, but I think they figured, let me just do this because this is going to confuse the audience, going to cause problems.
Yeah, I see.
Those two always had a great relationship. Mm-hmm. So that's why you never saw Joe Silva post maybe 2005, 2006 to any media. And I think he hated it. So plus as it was growing, there was going to be more of those controversies. So I think he was just willing to like, okay, no problem, Now that said, when Zuffa bought WEC, and they were running it, Reed Harris was their figurehead. Sean Shelby was their matchmaker. Sean Shelby worked for the UFC, but they made him the WEC matchmaker. We got Sean Shelby on the show in our studio because Joe Silva actually encouraged it. He wanted him to just do it a little bit. Sean wasn't and isn't still really much of a extrovert. And so he wanted him, and so he helped me push it because the WEC language didn't have that the matchmaker can't do any media.
Yeah.
Then I think the UFC wound up just absorbing it, and now we can't get Sean Shelby because of that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you'll never be able to get Mick, although we've gotten Mick when he was a promoter of LFC, which is now LFA. So there you go.
Okay.
So Ryan Bennett gets the call from Fight Network. Hey, go cover this boxing event on May 31st, 2006. And just as they were leaving the Salt Lake area where he lived, the tire blew out. It was him, his wife, 4 kids. He had a tire blowout. He got ejected, died instantly. 2 of the kids got messed up pretty good. So did the wife, but they all lived. But he died right away. I saw that night, I would go on MMA Weekly, whether it was the forum or whether it was just the page. See, the page would just be one page, all news.
Yeah.
That's it. One page, all news.
Mhm,
You didn't go to different pages or none.
The forum was kind of like what the underground is today.
Mhm.
And I went in there and I saw a thread that said, "Are you serious?" or "Please say it isn't so."
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mhm.
And I clicked it, and I don't know if that night I had been drinking or what, but I remember seeing something like, "We're trying to confirm if it's really him."
Somebody said they were. I think Scott said he was trying to get a hold of his brother or something like
Right.
that. Right.
And so I was like, I think I saw it, and this is as I'm like either falling asleep or drunk, and I remember seeing that that post. So the next day, the show always started at 9 a.m. Pacific. The next day I log in. About 8:55, you'd get in there, and people would start showing up to the chat. And as I logged in, the first messages that are dropping was like, "OMG, please no, how can this be? This has to be a joke." And when I saw that, right away I thought to that post the night before, and I go, "What?" And R.I.P. Here comes R.I.P.
Yeah.
Ryan. And I just thought, holy cow. And I remember being pretty shook up. I remember reading that and being pretty shook up, and then it hit me, bro. I started crying.
Mhm.
Like, that's how much that show meant to me. I remember I went outside and I took a call from, his name is SB Mike Ramirez. He was SB Mike in the chat. He called me as well, and you know, he was sad, but a guy that I barely had met a few times,
Yeah.
but that I
Yeah.
listened to every day, I had a connection to his voice, to a sport that I loved, just was gone, you know, and that sucked. So that was May 31st of 2006 that he passed away. Goes and I went a few weeks later. We were leaving for Germany for the World Cup. We talked to Frank Trigg, and Frank was messed up. I think Frank was in Japan, right, for Pride when he found out.
I think so. Yeah. And
Yeah.
actually, I think he didn't believe it at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
It took him a while. I was in school, and I had to hear your voicemail when I got out of school, and then I thought, is he joking or what? But yeah, it took a while, and but once everybody got together, the burial was in San Luis Obispo, so us two, Frank Trigg, Melissa, right, she used to work
And
for
Becca, Ring Girl.
the UFC. Oh, that's right.
Mhm.
We all drove to San
We
Luis
drove
Obispo
down there
for a
and-
service.
Mhm.
That wasn't the burial, though. That was a service. I think
Mhm.
the burial may have been in Utah. I
Yeah?
forget, yeah. But we went to a service. Chuck Liddell was there. Chuck Liddell was real good friends with Ryan because they were from San Luis Obispo.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
So it really, really impacted the whole sport.
Mhm.
And a few weeks later, we went to Germany for 3 weeks for the World Cup. And then when we got back, you know, by now it's maybe like July or August when you're kind of just trying to, you know, see what might be next. I
Yeah.
think we ran into Frank, and he's like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. He's still doing Pride. He's still a fighter.
Mhm.
And then we get to about, I want to say, early 2007, and then that's when we had like a breakfast or something,
Mhm.
and that's when
At IHOP.
Goes suggested that I host the show,
Mhm.
and Trigg endorsed it. He was like, yeah. He goes, Ryan groomed me, because Ryan was a professional broadcaster.
Mhm.
And he goes, Ryan groomed me. He goes, I can groom you. Because by now, Trigg was a professional broadcaster. He had done like 4 years of the MMA Weekly radio show daily. He committed to it.
Mhm.
He had done Pride. He was on Fox with Jay Glazer. So he goes, I can groom you. More than anything, he trusted us.
Mhm.
Now, I'm going to throw out a few names, and this is in no way to disparage them. He was going to continue it with Damon Martin, because Damon was part of MMA
Mhm.
Weekly. But Damon could only work at night, Damon could only do the show at nights because he was doing, I think, he worked for a cable company in Pittsburgh.
Mm.
So that didn't work. Trigg was a morning person. And then a guy named Randy Harris could only do like 3 days a week or something like that. Trigg wanted to do daily.
Mhm.
So
So the fact that you had absolutely nothing going on in your life
Kind
made
of.
you the prime candidate.
my mornings were free. Yeah.
Okay, that's how we should
My
explain
mornings
it.
were
His
free.
mornings were free.
Well,
And we
it-
had
it
become
took a little
friends,
bit.
and
Yeah.
a little bit.
Because we like this was at IHOP when we had this idea.
yes. Yeah.
And I was telling him I had a really popular blog on MySpace. And so at that time, I was already starting to write. I think it was called like 15 Questions with Goes, where I would interview fighters.
Uh-huh.
20 questions with Goes. And people that were just MMA fans were subscribing to my blog. And my blog was just about random shit, but there was a lot of people. So I told him right away, we'll have an audience. We'll have the audience from Sound Off. We just got to get Trig. And that's the only way he would do it. He said, is if we get Trig. And it took him a while,
yeah.
but they finally got it. And then from that moment, I think it took us about 8 months, right, to buy all the equipment, to figure out how we're going to do it. And
Well, but we would always ask him with the intention of like, are you gonna do it with who? Like, we weren't really thinking of us
Uh-huh.
early on.
Uh-huh.
oh yeah, no, early on, like, I mean, it's kind of cool, but it was kind of sad when Ryan passed away. Like for weeks after, everybody would still log into the chat at 9
Just
a.m.
chat.
Yeah.
But say there were like 50 people every day during the show.
Yeah.
After a month, 50 kind of became like 40,
Yeah.
then 35. But it was such a part of everybody's morning routine that we just were sad to see it go.
Yeah.
And we had an opportunity to kind of bring that back, not just the what we love to talk about, but just that routine.
Mhm.
And I don't know that we did it with the intentions of one day we're going to end up in Vegas in a studio, man. I don't think we had those intentions at all.
Yeah.
I think it was just kind of keeping what we loved going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So fast forward to April 11, 2007, and that was our first show. Trig had just gotten knocked out by Robbie Lawler, and he had. Wait, did he go do Pride or
No.
he got knocked out by Robbie
I
Lawler like
remember
on March 31st?
when we picked him up, because we picked him up the morning of our first episode.
Uh-huh.
And when we picked him up, we had this game plan. Like, hey, this is what the first show's going to sound like. This is what George and I were thinking. And we're going to focus it on your fight. And he goes, nope. We go, what do you mean, nope? That's like our whole game plan. And
Uh-huh.
he's like, I can't talk about it. And we're like, why can't you talk about it? I don't remember anything. And we were like, shit. And so
and I cornered him. I remembered it. you
Well,
know?
this is to me.
It was-
The
have you
episode-
seen how awful that KO is?
Yeah, well, to me, the episode's sounding even better now because you guys are going to inform him every step of the way about what happened.
So we kind of were already nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of being nervous, when we get there, now he's telling us that he can't talk
Yeah.
about what our whole entire strategy
Yeah.
was for the first episode. Back then, the episodes were 1 hour. And so we decided to do shots. And I think we had too many. Because when the show started, it started to kind of kick in a little bit.
Mhm.
And probably the end, I think we were probably slurring a little bit here and
Mm.
there, right?
I
But-
just remember I was awful, horrific.
No.
But I was having fun about 20 minutes in. I didn't want the show to end because I was really, really having fun. Maybe it was some alcohol, or maybe it was just the fact that we were just doing something that
Yeah.
we never thought we would do, but that it was pretty cool.
Now,
but
where
yeah.
did the first show air? I mean, how did people get it?
You had to go to tagradio.com.
Okay.
And there we had a guy named Jeff, computer guy Jeff was his name, and he set up the board, everything, and we would just hit start. It would go to the webpage. There'd be a little button. You hit the listen live, and
Mhm. Okay.
Kinda-
So you
kinda
had,
like
you had a
how
little
we-
player there, just like you had been used to. Okay.
and so
Dude, we
First-
spent a lot of money, man. I had to get 6 lines through Pac Bell or whatever the fuck.
but you know what? Those 6 lines would light up.
Oh,
There were
yeah,
times where we
6
had
lines,
them
and
all
then we
lit
had
up.
this big.
Oh wow, you guys could
board.
take phone calls, and you had like a bank.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's pretty
Still
impressive.
got it. Still got it.
Yeah.
It costs money, man. It costs money to do a lot of
Yeah.
it. And so when I tell people
Yeah.
up until this day, MMA can chew you up and spit you out. I've
Yeah.
been spit out a few times.
Yeah. Now, okay. The date again is what? For this?
April
Yeah.
11,
Yep.
2007.
Okay. And then you're doing this at your house at this point?
The house that we owned in Santa Ana, California, where we
Okay.
grew up.
And how long was it at the house? Did you do that?
I was there for about a year. Goes and Trig moved to Vegas around the same time,
Mhm.
later that summer,
Mm-hmm.
because he had to start UNLV, I
Mhm.
guess, August or September of 2007.
You guys
So we
moved
still connected via phones.
Okay, you guys moved
So-
coincidentally at the time, or you moved off
No,
together?
that was.
I started to say,
coincidentally.
what a terrible.
He was already there.
influence
He was
on
already
a-
there.
Okay, yeah.
And so what happened is, I got accepted to UNLV, so
Mhm.
I go there, and in the morning I would drive over to Trig's house. So it was like maybe a 5-minute drive.
Uh huh.
They got lucky there.
I would go into his living room. He'd usually be waiting there, and we would pick up 2 cordless phones. We would dial into the show.
You
over
take
there.
up 2 of the 6 lines on the phone.
No,
bank?
well, 1 line because we're both on cordless
Okay.
phones.
Oh, that's right. That's
And
right.
then, yeah, we would connect with George.
Uh-huh.
George would start the show, and so
Uh-huh.
Trig and I, it wasn't like we were always stepping over each other because
Yeah.
we could see each other. So I could tell him
Okay.
like, "Shut up, I'm going to talk," or he could tell
Yeah.
me, "Shut up." The only maybe him and I or Trig and him would step over each other a
Yeah.
little bit, but it just it really wasn't that bad. And like when you think about some of the characters that went on that show within that first year were pretty big names, and it just kind of picked up. The thing about the show is it was always, we never, I don't think ever said like, hey, we're losing listeners. We were always picking up, always picking up, and it was just getting bigger and bigger. And I guess we should probably do this in like 2 parts, right?
Yeah.
You guys getting
Yeah.
close to where we should probably stop here?
Yeah, this is all very good information for me. I mean, I knew the basics of kind of how everybody came together, and originally Frank Trigg was involved and all that, but a lot of the stuff I did not know. And I guarantee you, a lot of the stuff a lot of people don't know. And probably the people who did know it are interested to hear kind of the refresher course and maybe hear some of the stories behind the scenes they didn't already know. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to get everybody caught up to everything that got you to where you are now 12 and a half years later right here.
Yeah, so that got us to the first show, and like Ghost said, year 1 was a ton of fun. Trig was very, very popular and influential. He was a broadcaster. He was a ranked fighter, and I just remember early on we got like the Matt Serras of the world,
Yeah.
Joe Rogan's really early, quick
Chuck Zito.
Chuck Zito.
Mhm.
That was a little later in the fall. That was like in October at a Playboy Mansion party.
And we were,
Mhm.
at our second show, we had already had our first in-studio guest.
Yeah.
Uh,
In-house guest.
Yeah, we were able to do, in-house
Yeah.
guest.
We had 3 that week, right?
We had Joker Guyman, Mike Guyman.
Yeah.
We had Cub Swanson,
And Tiki Gosen.
Tiki Gosen.
All in week 1. That's
Mm.
been a strength of ours, is in studio
Yeah.
guests. Now they're co-hosts more than anything, but yeah, in studio guests. Just
Okay, so
California has a lot of fighters.
So in 2007, just a quick positioning statement. I am in Dallas. I'm hosting a nightly talk radio show, and I am probably
Went to
just
the big dick guy or something like that.
That's right.
Big Dick Hunter.
I was the big dick guy,
Yeah.
and in Dallas,
My
and-
cousin used to listen to you.
Yes, and I was starting to cover UFC. The first UFC event I covered was the second Chuck and Tito fight. Was that 64 or something like that?
This is about 66.
Somewhere right around there. And I remember it was a New Year's Eve weekend, so I'd have to look up the exact year, but it's got to be right about that time. Because what happened was I was covering boxing for HBO, Showtime a lot. And back then, HBO, if you were in a major market, a major radio market, top 5, they would fly you out. Like they'd put this up at the Bellagio and pay for all your meals, per diem, great tickets to the fight, all this. It was like a whole junket they bring you out on. So I used to go out on those all the time, and that's how the UFC got in contact with me. I think they got their list, like the list they used or whatever, and that back then they kind of needed press way more than they do now. So they were like, hey, come out, press credentials, tickets for the fight, and all that. So that's how I got into covering. So this is interesting. I'm just trying to paint a parallel picture, because right about the time you guys are launching this, I'm probably just now, even though I knew of the UFC, I'm really starting to pay close attention in terms of covering it and breaking it down on radio for the first time.
I wonder where
By the way, having
Frank Mir was at that time. Had he broken his leg yet and all that?
That's a good question. That
Get
I
used
don't
to it.
think
I
he
have
had.
a lot
Yeah.
of great questions.
Yeah. I mean, all of this is kind of happening right about. Isn't it interesting that all these people are living their own lives? I mean, even myself and Frank that do phone booth fighting together, having no familiarity with each other on a personal level. You guys are off
Were you
doing
eating
that
burgers
thing.
back then?
I was probably not, although I was not full vegan. I would have been a vegetarian at that point.
Okay. Liddell
Where's
Ortiz
this guy?
was December 30th, 2006.
Okay, so same.
Very close.
Same right before you guys launch. 4 months before you launch, I covered my first MMA fight. I'm here in Vegas doing that.
Wow.
I think it's kind of interesting the way these parallel journeys take place. Okay, see, I didn't know that. Now these timelines are syncing up. We're like girls that hang out together a lot, and then we start having periods at the same time. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. Yeah.
That
Well,
really does happen. Did you guys know that?
yeah,
It really actually
yeah.
does happen. Isn't that weird?
That's what I hear.
Well, it's like it's a 1 in 30 chance, right? Well, and then with the overlap, depending on how long the girl's period is,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a very good chance. 1 in 6 chance.
Yeah, we'll have to see if it happens to us.
Yeah.
We keep doing these shows, probably. Yeah.
Mhm. All right. Well, with that, I think maybe we should bow out.
Yeah, I think
For
this is a
today's show?
good point to stop on and then pick it right back up to
Maybe,
get everybody caught up to
The
the present
fall
on
of
the next episode.
2007.
We'll go through
Yeah.
the beginning of Tag Radio to where maybe we get to here, and then I think we might have to do a third part, and that's MMA Junkie
Oh yeah,
Radio.
we can take it slow, man.
Yeah.
This is just
Yeah.
this is the beginning. There's no rush. If anybody wants to know the details, many of you know how to get a hold of us, and as we release more information on our different tiers and how you can pledge, you'll see that you can be a big participant and ask us those types of questions.
Yeah, all those things that you see as far as the rewards on the different pledge levels, most, if not all of those, are different ways to incorporate you directly into the show. So as we progress over the weeks, you're going to start hearing more and more of specific listeners incorporated, specific questions they have, and things like that that will be in actual benchmark segments that we'll do.
And then you'll all find out why many times people have asked me, "Hey, how do I get involved?" The first thing I tell them is,
Don't do it.
"Don't get into MMA."
Mm.
You'll see through this journey of how we relive ours. There was a lot of ups and downs, trials and tribulations, many times when we could have just pulled the plug. But we got lucky along the way, made some great contacts, some saviors came into our lives. But yeah, this is a rough sport for sure.
Now you're lifers. There's nothing you can do
I
about
think
it.
so I'm institutionalized.
Yeah.
Like the older guy in Shawshank Redemption. What was his name?
Oh,
Brooks Hadlin.
Brooks Hadley.
Yeah,
If
Brooks.
you look
Oh.
up on the wall, it
Yeah.
says George was here.
It'll say
Top
George
over
was here somewhere in here. Yeah. Anyhow, all right. Look. Seriously, this has been a quick transition from the serious era to now this new era. Gorgeous Joe. Look, these token taglines: how to exit, how to start. We are gonna evolve it soon and get it going. But the important thing was for us to be seamless in our transition because we wanted to give you, Junkie Nation, what you've always had, and that's consistency.
You know something? Let me say one other thing real quick on that note, because to you guys, I mean, we're friends, and I've co-hosted the show and all that, but I'm a listener first and foremost to your show for a number of years now, and much like, it's funny how everything old is new again. Much like that picture you were painting early on, where you're listening to the MMA Weekly show, one day, out of the blue, through unforeseen circumstances, it's gone, and all these people are right there going, do we never have a show again? Do we keep coming into this chat room? If we do, is there anything we can do to keep this going? And then it keeps going. My first thought as a listener, when you say, okay, we're no longer going to be on SiriusXM Radio, is exactly that. Okay, that's fine, but can I just get it in a different place? This show is going to continue, right? You guys are going to continue to do this on a consistent basis, on a weekly and at this point semi-daily basis, and the answer is yes, and that's where Patreon comes in, and the Patreon page, Triple G Show, and so that's, I think, just an important thing to document, is that all this, even though you guys had this in the works for a long time in terms of the idea of doing a page, actually getting the news of what was going on with SiriusXM and the departure and all that, We got all this together really quick.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all born out of the fact that the one thing you guys knew was got to keep going on. Got to maintain the connections. Got to maintain the connections with the listeners.
I know
and,
no
and
other
the
way to do
connections
it.
with the fighters.
For sure.
All these fighters that have come to see this is way more of a radio show, way more than a radio show over the years. It's like a must, a destination must for them when they're in Las Vegas or it's fight week or whatever. So all those things are the things that get to continue.
Yeah, and we're excited about it. So hopefully you can be part of the journey. And
Tell
again,
your friends.
check out all the different levels of how you can participate. It's a belt system, so as you'll notice, it parallels Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Blue, purple, brown, black. I guess the explanation is to white. White's anybody that can stumble onto the page and just go, oh, look, and we're all white belts. If you, like you said, if we showed up and started training, that's the level we would all start
Right.
at. So that's why we started at blue. At least we thought that one through.
Yeah.
All right, folks. That's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this introduction show, and we're just going to keep it going and evolving. And, again, join us for the ride.
Part 2 coming up.